Working on the railway, Dad worked on the railway, and I eventually went on the railway in 1950. We used to go because we had free passes on the train, so it allowed us to get about a lot. My first recollection of going on a train was in 1947. I would be then coming up 12 years of age. It was January 1947. And we went down to London on a Friday evening to watch Charlton and Blackburn Rovers on the Saturday afternoon. 1947, as people that were living at that time would realise, it was a terrible winter. The snow was thick on the ground. We arrived London about 5:30 in the morning. We travelled overnight, Dad and his mate and myself, and that's the first time I'd ever been to London in my life. And he showed me Buckingham Palace and changing of the guards and what have you. And we arrived at, well, why I know now, it was the Valley at Charlton. And the gates was open, and we arrived about 12:30. And before I knew what we was doing, Dad was sweeping the line on the snow. They wanted volunteers. The snow was 5 foot at the back of the goal mouth. And they swept the lines, and I don't know what I did. I probably didn't do anything, but... And then the match eventually started. It wasn't snowing. And we was drawing 0-0. And then in the last few minutes, Charlton scored, and we got beat. Now, that was the first away game I'd ever been to with Dad. And we then went for the train. We had to fly, and it was about 5:30 in the evening. We caught the London train back to Manchester. We were changing at Manchester. And whilst we were on the train, somebody had come down and said, "The Rovers are on the train." So we went down and saw them, and they were there. Anyway, when we arrived at Manchester, Piccadilly, it was about 1:30 in the morning. Took us over 8 hours to get home with the snow. Now then, no train. Well, about 7 o'clock the following morning, Sunday morning, Rovers had a Ribblesdale coach waiting for them. Eddie Hapgood was the manager, and Dad, in for a shilling, in for a pound, went to see Mr. Hapgood and asked him, was there any chance of a lift? Certainly, he said. So me, my dad, and his mate, we was on the Rovers coach back to Blackburn. And I was sat next to one of the players, and I got my first clip around the ear hole, because my dad said, I asked this guy, where's Jimmy Baldwin? He had missed the biggest sitter that day I have ever seen in my life. The ball came out, it bounced on the halfway line, it went straight over the centre half, and they had one of the best goalers in the world of that day, called Sam Bartram. He come out, it bounced over his head, so you could tell how hard the ground was, and Jimmy Baldwin's still running. He's only the open goal tit, and he pushed it wide. And I said, "It's Jimmy Baldwin." And my dad, he said, "You shouldn't ask him that." And this bloke said, "No, he stayed in London, son, today." So I never got to see Jimmy Baldwin. I've got his autograph, by the way. And that was my first recollection of an away game, 1947. When I first started work, I started as an engine cleaner at Lower Darwen Shed, as Blackburners know it as Lower Darwen Shed. And that was right at the back of the Darwen End corner, left-hand corner, looking down towards Darwen End. The shed was built there. And when we was on afternoons and the Rovers were at home, there was a turntable that used to turn engines in that top corner, about a quarter of a mile from the Rovers ground. And we could see the Darwen half, and we used to sneak up and watch the Rovers match when they were playing. Blackburn used to, like probably other towns, had an half-day closing, and that was on a Thursday. And I recollect, I started work in 1950, I was 15, and I got in this football team. Lower Darwen Shed, being on shift work, we had a team in the league. Like the cooperative and other shops used to give their teams. There was about 6 or 7 teams. We used to play Thursday afternoon. There was one particular team called Vale 11. Now, I don't know what sort of business they were in, but when we were playing them this day, and a pal of mine that played with it, he said, "Do you know them 2 guys either?" They were big, hell, they were big lads. And I said, "No." He said, "Well, that guy there played for Blackburn Rovers in 1928 Cup final. He was the captain." I said, "What's he called?" He said, "Elis, Harry Elis. And that's his son." I said, "You're joking." He said, "I'm telling you, it was Elis, Rankin and Campbell, 1928, half-back line. And he played. So, hell, I don't know how old he was. He must have been 50-odd. But he could kick a ball and kick people as well. He was a good player. And that's my recollection. So I've been involved, even though I weren't born, in 1928 Cup final. I played against the player that won the cup. I can say that.